Hello. So, Matt, we're back from Experimentation Elite, where we did the GRO Talks roundtables. It was a live session. And during the technical implementation roundtable, nobody really wanted to, none of the devs, and I was surrounded by devs, none of them wanted to raise a challenge or a topic. So I went through some questions. And this question really hit a nerve. And the question was this: what strategies help you handle complex or impossible test designs? And it was this impossible test designs that got everybody like in with the conversation, and everybody had a view. Is that a, first of all, is that a question that the trigger or
yeah, that's an excellent question. And for the sessions where I moderated that same table topic, because you did one of them and I did three of them. On the three that I did, that subject essentially came up without me having to ask that question. So yeah, I was essentially discussed at every single time that topic session rolled around.
Yeah, and it's a good one to get into, actually. So what we discussed now is kind of like it's almost like a communication breakdown or lack of communication between the design and the developers, and also it's an issue, I think, with developers not being involved in the experimentation planning stage, or maybe the product owners, the product managers creating the designs with the designers, or maybe the designers creating the designs without speaking to the developers. But in general, the issue seems to be developers not in the loop. Is that something that kind of struck a bell for you as well?
Yes, and it's not like just developers not being involved. It can be from any direction, like the developers not involved at appropriate steps, the designers not involved at appropriate steps, etc., etc. And I don't necessarily agree that it's a communication issue. I would sort of have a little bit of a more nuanced way to say that, in that it's a skills understanding issue across disciplines. Meaning like a product manager is scoping out a test without sufficient enough understanding of design considerations or development considerations, and then they hand it off to, say, like the designer, and the designer has to mock something up, and the designer doesn't have a good understanding of developer specifications for, like, okay, if I can build this thing, I have to do XYZ things to build it, and introduce an additional framework or scripting that doesn't exist, or whatever, right? And it's slowing, like, you're trying to get this like picture perfect thing, and everybody's slowing down the process. Whereas if all three of those people were involved collaboratively or from early on, you would probably be able to cut through a lot of those like Gordian knot type issues where the dev might say, okay, I like that design, but if we change just these two things, that takes it from a 20-hour task for me to like a 4-hour task, right? And we're cutting out 16 hours of extra work there just for this like small concession that the designer or the product person could make.
And that, I think, is not a skill set that any designer or any product owner could even learn. I think that is something that comes from developers being close to the code, because it's not even a developer thing per se. It's
right. Yeah, I was just using that as like the hypothetical, right? Like the same thing could be happening at the design stage or vice versa.
Yeah, but it's an issue with the specific sort of code base that the developers are working in, and the fact that the developers are close to the code base, and the fact that the developers know how to develop, those two skill sets mean that they're able to kind of say, well, we can't do X design. That design will take, weeks. This sort of approach may take less than a day. And then that may also be completely fine from a design perspective and from a product management perspective. One of the other things that I've raised is kind of like is about metrics as well, because I really think that there is an issue with especially when it comes to the size of an experiment being really, really big, that there is a lack of thought being put into the metrics, going into those tests. Because if you're doing something really risky, a risky test needs to really have a lot of metrics attached to it in order to capture, behavioral impact of, certain changes and stuff
all the
that.
tangential variables that big risky change could be affecting that you want to learn from, because you want to get something for your effort put in there. You don't want to just throw up your hand. Like, you run this big test, if it doesn't win, you're just like, oh well, on to the next one. We just blew 50 hours worth of work. Like, no one wants that, right? That's not a good.
And the reason why I raised that is because I think analysts also need to be in the conversation as well. So it is like what you were saying about the collaborative effort, and what actually Lucia was talking about in her talk, the collaborative bonus, which is when the various discipline skill sets come together, then they're able to work effectively in order to create effective test ideas and effective test designs and implementations as well. And I think that is something that I think the bigger the company is, the bigger the problem is as well. It seems like the lack of communication, and also the longer the time difference between, say, design to development to analysis and all that kind of stuff, then there's like a relevance bleed, as I call it, in terms of you lose relevance, not in terms of like the heart and soul of what the test is about, but also the test integrity also dies a little bit in those gaps. So yeah, I think there is a like collaboration problem there, in that experimentation is one of those things that needs a cross-disciplinary skill set, or cross-disciplinary people coming together and working efficiently together.
Yeah. Like, each hypothetically, the ideal situation is that you have, everybody has a T-shaped skill set, and there's a baseline competency that runs throughout the entire team for every related skill. And it's just that they're like, each individual, their peak is at a different stage of the process, but you can cleanly communicate throughout. You were saying, like, as the organization gets bigger, right? There's a paradox there of, well, you have more resources, but it takes more time to do things. The old, you can't, like, 90-degree turn a battleship on a dime really quickly type of thing. Like, a smaller org can be a little bit more nimble there, but they have less capability to do things.
Yeah. Cool. I think there is a much longer discussion in terms of getting into potential solutions and stuff, but I think understanding the problem, as we've established here, is a really key part in terms of like trying to figure out what the solution could be. And so yeah, I think this is a good place to leave it, and it's a good place to kind of like put the question out there in terms of, is that, do you see that as a problem in your organizations? And then, yeah, what are you doing to solve those problems?